Scream 2022. I really didn't like this movie at all. Spoiler warning, because I'm going to be pretty much talking about everything in the movie here. To begin with, this movie isn't even scary. The Scream movies are supposed to be horror films at their core. Horror movies are supposed to be making audiences uncomfortable and afraid in their seats, worried for the characters. Remember the opening scene in the first Scream movie when you meet Drew Barrymore's character as she answers Ghostface's call? You're outright terrified for her as she's trying to escape the killer in her own house. You even see her parents walk by her wounded body without even seeing her as she's crying for help. At the end, you see the teaser how the killer displays her body and hangs her up from the tree. There's nothing like that in this movie. There's a decent opening scene featuring the character of Tara getting attacked in her house where she tries to use her phone security app to keep the house locked up, but the killer overrides it and attacks her. But other than that, we pretty much have scenes of characters randomly turning around and seeing Ghostface standing there. Ghostface lunges at them and stabs them, and they die, and that's it. The filmmakers seem to think that meta commentary is the most important aspect of the Scream series. So the movie spends way too much of its time with characters making references to the Stab series, which is the movie within a movie series based on Scream. Remember that because it's important later. They talk about Jordan Peele movies in the genre of elevated horror, but it doesn't really go anywhere, and the new cast spend most of their time talking about horror movies and horror movie tropes like they're too cool to be killed. When a character disappears, another character flippantly goes, "Oh, they're probably dead now," and tells another surviving character, "You just moved up on my suspect list." And all in the meantime, while they're just casually sitting there watching a movie together that depicts a relative of one of theirs almost getting murdered. What are with these kids in this movie? Are they detached from reality? They're so blasé about everything. In the original film, the characters seem much more like actual human beings. Yeah, Randy was a little weird, who talked about everything as a horror plot, but he was just one character in the movie. Now it feels like everyone's like that. None of the new cast is really impressive, especially Melissa Barrera as the new lead. She plays a character named Sam Carpenter who returns to Woodsboro after her sister Tara, who's the character who gets attacked in the opening scene. But simply to put it, Melissa Barrera is terrible in this movie. It looks like expressing emotion is painful for her. There's a scene in the hospital where she and her sister are crying together, and it looks like the actress can't cry at all and tries to hide her face with her hands. It feels like that scene in Tropic Thunder where Tug Speedman is trying to cry while Kirk Lazarus is bawling in front of him. I wouldn't be surprised if we found out later the actress needed to have CGI tears on her face. The new hook for the movie is that some of the cast is related to characters from the original movie. Sam has a hidden secret, and that it is that she is Billy Loomis's daughter. She's ashamed of her past, and that's why she left town and abandoned her sister. She actually has visions of her father, and we get a few scenes of a bloodied CGI de-aged Skeet Ulrich showing up in mirrors giving her advice. Like, what the hell? As the film goes on, she's getting visions from her dead serial killer father, where he gives her motivation to survive. Is this supposed to be inspiring? It sounds like more like this character needs mental health counseling. She also gets the worst one-liner ever. She actually shouts, "Don't mess with the daughter of a serial killer," as she fights one of the killers. Of the legacy cast, Neve Campbell, David Arquette, and Courtney Cox come back, but in much smaller roles. They're there to pass the torch to the new cast. Of the three, David Arquette has the biggest role as Dewey. But instead of him being the lovable, goofy, and heroic character that he used to be, they turned him into a drunken, bitter idiot. We find out that Dewey moved to New York City with Gail because she got a talk show job, but they divorced because he, quote-unquote, couldn't take New York City, and he just abandoned her in the middle of the night and moved back to Woodsboro. He got fired as the sheriff, and now he lives in a trailer, getting drunk and watching Gail's show every day. He gets talked into helping the younger cast after meeting Sam. Then they kill him. They kill Dewey in the dumbest way possible. He goes with Sam to the hospital to save her sister Tara from Ghostface. He fights Ghostface and shoots the killer multiple times in the chest. Just as they're about to escape on the elevator, he gets off at the last minute so he can shoot the killer in the head to confirm the kill. Then, just as he gets ready to pull the trigger, he gets a phone call from Gail and it distracts him, so Ghostface jumps up and disembowels him from the front and the back. We also see Ghostface is wearing a bulletproof vest, which is how they survived the initially getting shot in the chest. It's bad enough that they kill Dewey, but that's how they do it. He's been through this 4 different times and stabbed multiple times. He even talks about the rules of horror when they first meet him and how risky it is for him to even assist and get involved in this. Dewey would be much smarter. He'd be smart enough to not go back, especially on his own. They had to make the character dumb so they could kill him off. If Dewey had to die, then he should have died much smarter. He should have died sacrificing himself to make sure other people could get away. Instead, he died a completely preventable And honestly, I think it's kind of a stupid death. Neve Campbell and Courtney Cox have even smaller roles in the film. With the exception of one short scene for each, neither really enters the movie until the third act. Both look like they are just done with being in this franchise, especially Neve Campbell. But even with her phoning it in, she's still 10 times the actress that Melissa Barrera is. I do like the character development of Sydney, though. She has a family to protect now and is no longer going to be a victim. The second she hears that Dewey died, she shows up in Woodsboro to hunt Ghostface down herself, because she knows that if she doesn't deal with this now, her family might have to deal with it later. Courtney Cox is just kind of there as Gale Weathers. She arrives in town to cover the killings for the news, but winds up being Sydney's sidekick, more or less. I'm going to talk about who the killers are and their motivations, so if you don't want the end of the movie spoiled, then turn it off at this point. At the end, we find out that the killers are Sam's boyfriend Richie, played by Jack Quaid in The Boys, and Amber, played by Mikey Madison from Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, which means that Dewey got disemboweled and killed by an 18-year-old girl. Their rationale for being the killers is what upsets me so much about the film, even more than Dewey's death. Richie and Amber are disgruntled fans of the Stab series. They didn't like the direction of Stab 8, so they decided to start their own killing spree to inspire better stories. They even mentioned Rian Johnson as the director of the controversial Stab 8, inspired no doubt by fan complaints of him directing Star Wars The Last Jedi. This part of the plot specifically feels like Hollywood and the filmmakers are giving the middle finger to fandom. Apparently, if you don't take their non-stop assembly line of bad sequels and remakes, then you are the toxic one, not the corporation for making soulless, bland bullshit movies. No, it's never the filmmaker's fault for making cheap, shitty-looking cash grab sequels. I hate how anytime fans receive a movie negatively, it's fans that are painted as racist, toxic, or evil. This notion is pushed by this movie and by Hollywood in general. We're bad guys, apparently, for not liking their never-ending terrible movies and expressing our disagreement with them. Apparently that makes us evil. Being what they consider a toxic fan is the equivalent of being a serial killer, I suppose. Also, to anyone in advance who says things like, you're the kind of fan this movie is making fun of, you aren't actually defending the movie against its flaws. You're just defending the filmmaker's lame attempt to preemptively deflect criticism. In the end, the two killers get defeated. Sam gets a vision of her dead serial killer father to help her defeat the bad guys. Seriously, that's how it ends. Sydney and Gale live. They don't say it outright, but at the end it kind of feels like the movie is handing the franchise over to the Sam character. She might be a terrible actress, but maybe it's for the best, because I don't want to see them ruining the Sydney and Gale characters over and over again by bringing them back. This movie was a major disappointment to me. Scream 2022 is going to be the Halloween resurrection of this series to me. It's not canon in my mind. Just like Busta Rhymes beating out Michael Myers, I'm going to pretend that this never happened, and you should too.